Hey, what's up guys? In today's video we're going to be hooking up temporary power to an underground service, kind of. I'll show you what we got here. So this is the construction site here, new house. They already got started. You can see they got a generator out. And this whole neighborhood, it's a combination of overhead and underground. So for the length of the street, we have our line run right down the center of the street, and each pole with a transformer on it has some ductwork with some 350 MCM cables coming down, heading over to one of these boxes. Now, there should be a box across the street as well. The cables were all ran before the road was paved. So we can see over here, there's also some boxes and some ductwork already pre-run for the future builds over there. So this particular job, it can easily be done live. However, the work order states that the connections, the terminals inside the URD box only have 4 slots. So basically 1 for the feed and 3 homes. These are going to be semi-detached houses. 4 slots aren't enough. So it said to bring some 6 slots. We're going to be trying out these new connectors here. They're supposed to be 100% watertight, gel port, Racham. I'm not sure who makes them, but guys usually ask. Probably can't see that label, kind of can. Anyways, not promoted at all, just a lot of times guys ask the name of products we use. So this here, these guys are a pain. They're just loaded with silicone, keep the water out. And on this end, we pop these guys open. And you can see, just use an Allen key to tighten them up. And again, there's some goo in this guy here to keep the water out. So let's slap on the helmet cam and get started. First thing we're going to do is open that transformer, check for voltage, start swapping out those terminals. So just before I shut the power off, I'm going to take the lid off and take a look and see what we got here. There was one house that there was actually someone living already, and he was working. So if I had done it live, when I swap his cables over, it's still going to cause an outage for him. So it's still easier just to shut the power off and get the job done a whole lot quicker and a whole lot safer. As it stands, those cables are all still live. I told him I'd give him 15 or 20 minutes before we get started. So I'm just kind of puttering around here now. But basically the temporary, we just do a quick inspection, make sure it's not going to fall over, check to make sure the permit's there. I'm just going to start digging a little bit. The electrician, you can see that tech cable that's laying on the ground. The electrician is supposed to have this trench dug already and have the cable buried and leave the last 2 feet or so open as it is now, so that we can shove that cable in. They used to dig under the box and shove the cable in, but we don't want them shoving that wire into a live box. You don't know what it's poking around at. So I'm just kind of doing a bit of prep, and I figured before I go any further, it's been 15 minutes or so, we might as well get this transformer open. So this, I believe that's a 75 kVA. There is potential for there to be more than 10 amps on that cutout, but it is only feeding the one customer right now, so there's no issue in opening that with a telescopic stick from the ground without using a load buster. Where the power is off now, I don't need rubber gloves to work on this. You can see my voltmeter in the bottom corner. I did do a voltage check before getting started. Geez, you can see the water already in the pipe there too, even with the drainage. It's actually a contractor that builds all this along with a subdivider according to our specs, and then we do an inspection. We don't install this equipment initially. Once the ducts are run, we run the wires into it. They come to our office to pick up the equipment such as the URD box. These connectors here, I'm kind of taking them apart without cutting the cables just to kind of try and salvage as much as I can. But the wire was mangled so bad, in the end I just decide I'm wasting my time, so I'm just going to cut them off. And I don't think I'm either going to even bother reusing those connectors, because you can see there is already a little bit of corrosion. You can see on that wire the marks where the lugs pierced into the cables, so we're just going to cut all those tips off, make them all the same length. It also makes it much easier when you loop these cables around and fold them back into the box if every cable that's going into the connector block is the exact same length. The nice thing, I haven't used these connectors a whole lot, they're fairly new to us, but one thing I do really like, you can see where the wire goes in, the plastic's clear, so you can actually see that the bare wire goes into the connector, and you can actually see where the bolt bites down into the wire, that you do have a good connection. You don't want to skin them back too far. Where the seal is on the connector, you'll see in a minute, there's a whole lot of silicone and gel and stuff in there. You want that to be against the jacket of the wire, not the strands, otherwise wire will definitely get in. Didn't want to torture you guys with me skinning wire for 5 minutes here, so we're just kind of zipping through this, making an absolute mess on the ground. Where this is just temporary, it's feeding a 100 amp entrance. I filmed this like 3 weeks ago or a month ago. I can't remember what size that wire is. I believe it's 1/0 aluminum. Just put a little bit of gravel on it, put some weight on that wire. Technically, if we show up and that wire is not already prepped, we're supposed to walk away from the job, and the electrician pays a fine, a small fine, it's like $100 or something, for us showing up to the visit and things not being ready. But for the extra 15 minutes it took for me to dig that trench, I mean, it wasn't an overly busy day, so I just called the electrician and let him know next time to dig the trench for us. Usually we show up, make the connections, put the lid on, and on to the next one. Got a real good shot of the clear portion where the wire goes in. Can't remember if I show it here or not, but you can see where there's no bare wire exposed, where it's going into that port there at all. That's very important. You want to make sure that the insulation goes right into that black sleeve portion. And again, these connectors are pre-filled with silicone, and I don't think there's any anti-ox in these, where it is aluminum to aluminum. That socket loves getting stuck in those aluminum connectors. This part's pretty straightforward. The 350 MCM, it's the first one I put in, and then actually that second one is feeding that box across the street. So just a small correction, that other customer was fed off the other pole, but the same transformer. So he's not actually in this specific box. So I could have done it live and left him on, but it's not a big deal. I ended up being out for 15-20 minutes, and I did mention to him that if it was a problem, we could avoid the outage, and he said no, go ahead. You can see some of the goop coming out. That's what's spinning around on my drill. The goop's wound all around those connections, even on the lids of them. And those white caps, you can see all the goop there. It's sticking to my hands, kind of a pain in the butt. But I guess we'll see in 5 years how these connectors do, if there's any water in them or not. But the manufacturer says they can be fully submerged in water and the water will not penetrate. So looks like an outrigger pad I'm kneeling on. That's actually something I just got brand new last week as well. That specific one is for my bucket. It's like 1 inch thick of foam. I think it's made by Essex. I think it's an Essex bucket pad, and I also have an Essex kneeling pad. I've been using the bucket pad since I got it every time I work on underground. A lot easier on the knees than kneeling on the gravel. You can also see when I tuck them into the box, I try to keep the connectors as high as possible. That red one's sinking down to the bottom a little bit more than I'd like. And I mean, there's not supposed to be any water get in there anyways. It does have like a drain tile set up underneath it, but water does get in there. So I try to keep the connectors as high as I can in the box. And that lid, it must weigh like 50 pounds, 60 pounds, I'm not sure, but it's heavy. I got that little steel rod that hooks in. And then we just have our little penta bolts there. It's not a standard socket size. I mean, if someone really wants to get into this, they could. But that's like anything, like any pad mount, any of our equipment. If someone really wanted to get into it, they could. It's not a good idea. Generally, people don't. But as I'm sure you're all used to, any underground streetlight circuit, they're constantly just getting stolen for the copper. That's why there's no copper in that box. It's all aluminum. And of course, clean up your job site. And last thing we've got to do is close in the transformer. And finally, with a quick voltage check, checking across our two hots, make sure we have our 240. And then we do a final check between our one hot and our neutral, just in case we mixed up our hot wires.